All right, everyone, ready to dig in. Today we're looking at something a lot of you have been asking about, how the next election might shake things up in the world of gold and currency. You know, that whole 2024 thing, right?
Yeah, it's a big one. And honestly, it's a really smart connection to be thinking about. When things feel uncertain, markets like gold and currency, they tend to react, sometimes in a big way.
Makes sense. Kind of like that feeling when you're on a roller coaster going up that big hill, you know? You feel it in your gut. Something's about to happen.
So our source material today really hums in on that election month specifically. They're suggesting things could get, well, volatile. Is that how you see it? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. If you look back at past elections, like back in 2016, for example, leading up to the actual vote, the price of gold actually shot up almost 5% in just that single month. And at the same time, the dollar dipped, went down against some of those other big currencies out there.
Wow, 5% in a month. That's a pretty wild ride.
Right. And look, no two elections are identical. Of course, history doesn't repeat exactly, but it gives you a sense of the potential energy we're talking about. That volatility can definitely be lurking out there.
For sure, for sure. So, okay, we've got the election itself, the potential for things to get a little wild in the markets. But it's obviously more than just who wins or loses on the day, right? There are bigger things at play here that impact how things shake out.
Absolutely. It's like, you're right. It's about the ripple effects. Think about it. A new administration comes in. They might have totally different ideas about economic policy.
Right, different priorities, different approaches.
Exactly. And those changes, they can really throw things for a loop. You got potential tax reforms, new trade deals.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to adjust government spending.
All those things have got to impact how investors are feeling.
For sure. Take trade, for example. Like, imagine a sudden shift where a new administration is all about protectionist trade policies. The dollar might weaken, which on the flip side could make gold way more appealing, especially for those international buyers looking for, an alternative.
Interesting. So it's all connected. And on top of those policy shifts, I imagine the overall mood of the country after the election plays a role too, right?
Oh, huge. Think about it. A really strong, clear victory, it often leads to a sense of confidence in the markets. People feel stable, like they know what to expect. But a super close election, one that drags on or, gets contested even, that can create a ton of uncertainty.
And uncertainty can make investors nervous.
Totally.
Yeah.
And when investors get nervous, sometimes even a little bit, well, let's just say they start looking for places to put their money that feel safe, stable.
Which is where that classic image comes in, right? People rushing out to buy gold bars when things get uncertain. It's like gold becomes this, I don't know, a safe haven in a storm or something.
It's funny you should say that, because that's actually a really good way to put it. When investors get nervous about the future, about what might happen, they often see gold as this really reliable way to protect their wealth. It's a tangible asset. You could hold it, touch it, right? And it's got this long history of holding its value, particularly during times of, well, economic or political turmoil.
Okay, so gold is looking pretty good when things are uncertain. But you mentioned earlier how everything is connected. Where does the U.S. dollar fit into all of this?
Good point. It's really important to remember that the U.S. dollar and gold often have this kind of like inverse relationship, kind of like a seesaw. One goes up, the other goes down.
I'm with you.
So picture this. If the dollar gets stronger compared to other currencies, then gold might not seem quite as attractive to some investors, especially those buying from other countries. But if the dollar weakens, well, suddenly gold is looking a lot more appealing. So one of the really interesting questions about 2024 is, will the election cause investors to flock toward one or the other? And more importantly, what will that tell us about how everyone's feeling about the future?
That's a really good point. It's like reading between the lines, trying to figure out what those market moves are telling us.
Exactly.
So this has been super insightful, and I'm sure everyone wants to know, but any chance you've got a crystal ball stashed away with all the answers, be honest.
Laughs. Oh, man, if only it were that easy. Unfortunately, none of us can predict the future with absolute certainty, no matter what those TV psychics tell you. But what we can do is equip ourselves with knowledge, explore those potential scenarios so we're prepared.
I like that. Knowledge is power, right? So how can our listeners do that? How can they wrap their heads around all this and maybe even spot some good opportunities along the way?
That's the spirit. And honestly, you're already halfway there by just being curious and asking those questions. But here's a few things to think about. First, dig a little deeper into the economic policies of each candidate or each party, whichever one you're leaning towards. Doesn't matter. Just take a look. What are their stances on things like taxes, trade, government spending, that kind of stuff? Then maybe do a little research. Look back in time, see how gold and currency have acted in the past. Think about past elections, times when big policies changed, even global events that really shook things up. See if you can spot any patterns.
That's smart. See how things have played out before.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, and this one's huge, think about your own risk tolerance. Be honest with yourself. Are you comfortable with the idea that your investments might go down a little in the short term, maybe even lose a bit of value, with the hope that they'll bounce back and grow in the long run? Or are you more about stability? Prioritizing security above all else. Knowing how much risk you're okay with, that'll really help you figure out how to navigate these potential market shifts.
That's such a good point. So much of this is about knowing yourself, your own comfort level. Okay, so
Yeah.
don't just sit there worrying, get informed, be proactive, and figure out what your risk tolerance is.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. And, while you're at it, here's one more thing to keep in mind. The 2024 election, its impact, it's going to be felt way beyond just the world of gold and currency. I mean, think about it. Real estate could be impacted, bonds, even specific industries like the tech sector, energy companies, those could all see changes. So keep your eyes open. Think about how those areas might be affected by the election and the policies that follow. Because who knows, understanding those connections, it might reveal even more opportunities or, potential red flags to watch out for.
It's like they say, information is key. Well, on that note, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today. As we get closer to 2024, keep those questions in mind. It's going to be an interesting ride.
You got it. And remember, sometimes the most exciting opportunities pop up when things feel the most uncertain.